Hello everyone, Takuya here, and welcome back to the History of Everything podcast YouTube channel. On today's episode, we go into one of my favorite dumb events of history, that time that a North Korean submarine got caught by, a literal fishing vessel. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then please, allow me to explain. Listen to this story. So as I'm sure that many of you are aware, ever since that armistice agreement between North Korea and South Korea in 1953, tensions between the two have, not exactly ever really been the best. And by that I mean there have been high points and there have also been relatively low points. Though nowadays it is very rare for gunfire to be exchanged across the border that is the 38th parallel. Instead, what usually each side does is rely on instead forms of espionage or propaganda campaigns. Which among all of these, I have to say that my favorite example is when South Korea goes and decides to have a bit of a K-pop show, like literally on the border with North Korea, setting up massive loudspeakers and blasting K-pop into the countryside. Is this to demoralize the enemy? Is it to convince the populace that South Korea is better? Who knows? Could be any of it. It's still hilarious to think about. Like, God, just imagine, if you will, that you are a North Korean official stationed there at the border, and every day, day in, day out, for hours on end, you listen to the same K-pop song blasted over and over again. I know the unaliving rates in North Korea are probably pretty high, but they probably went up on that day. But of course, not all of these events are bloodless, and in 1998, the extraction of North Korean spies from South Korea was foiled by a rather unlikely defense mechanism, that being a simple fishing net. You see, it was on June 22nd, 1998, when you had this North Korean Yugo-class submarine that became disabled in South Korean waters, this being around 11 miles east of Sokcho and 21 miles south of the inter-Korean border. While there, the North Korean vessel became tangled in the South Korean fishing net, and while the crew tried to get it out, it didn't exactly work. They were stuck. So this surfaced and now very disabled submarine was then observed by South Korean fishermen, who would go on to notify the South Korean Navy of the fact that, well, they had sighted a North Korean sub in their waters. So the Navy goes and they dispatch a corvette, which was promptly sent to intercept the North Koreans. The submarine was taken and then towed back by the corvette back to the Navy base at Donghai with its crew still inside. Unfortunately for them, on their way back to port, the submarine sank. Now, of course, at this point, we don't know if the sinking of the submarine was something that was intentional or unintentional. It could have been something that was scuttled by the crew because they didn't want to be captured, or it could be something as simple as it had taken too much damage and succumbed to its injuries over time. We really don't know. But the end result was the same. The submarine sank to the bottom, and it was not going to be able to be obtained again for a few more days. And so what now? You may think that, okay, this is really big news, North Korea has to respond to this. What are they going to say about this matter? Well, the very next day, the North Korean state-run Korean Central News Agency goes and announces that one of their submarines had been lost in an unfortunate training accident. Yes indeed, a training accident. Absolutely. Totally. Definitely believe that source. If there is anything that we've ever covered on this channel, it is why you should absolutely always trust North Korea. But anyway, back to the submarine. So a few days later, on June 25th, the submarine was salvaged by South Korea. It had sunk to a depth of approximately 30 meters, and inside, when they went to examine things, they found the bodies of 9 North Koreans that would end up being recovered. Not one of the crew members would actually survive, but there was a rather interesting thing to note about them. That being that 5 of the 9 crew members had apparently been executed, with 4 of them having been point-blank shot in the head. What appears to have happened is that the 4 other crew members, along with the commander of the vessel, had executed them, perhaps in that sense to keep them from getting in the hands of the enemy, or to stop them from suffering, while they were down there for 3 days. These then turned their weapons on themselves and subsequently ended their own lives. But it wasn't just the bodies of the crew members that the South Koreans found down there. What was also found in the submarine was 2 automatic rifles, there were 2 machine guns, there was a shoulder-fired rocket launcher, diving equipment, oxygen tanks, military boots, and hand grenades. And now, while this equipment isn't anything crazy to necessarily find on a military submarine, the fact that there were South Korean drinks and other items inside the submarine would suggest that these were agents who had completed some kind of espionage mission, either recently or at least sometime in the past. The logbook of the submarine would note that there were multiple incursions into South Korean waters on previous voyages. Thus, these spies could have been there doing essentially anything before they were subsequently ended by a fishing net. Definitely not the most James Bond-esque way to end a story, I'll tell you that much. But that was the end for these guys, and so their bodies were subsequently buried in the cemetery that was for North Korean and Chinese soldiers. Now, while that technically is the end of today's story, interestingly enough, this whole thing took place during a period of time in South Korea where what they were trying to enact was something called the Sunshine Policy. Which may sound a little bit odd, so allow me to explain that real quick. The Sunshine Policy, for anyone who doesn't know, that was the foreign policy of South Korea towards North Korea until Lee Myung-bak's election to the South Korean presidency in 2008. The basic idea of this, when you had this under South Korean President Kim Dae-jung, was that this policy was supposed to emphasize peaceful cooperation, that you were supposed to have short-term reconciliation as a kind of prelude to eventual Korean reunification. In other words, be nice to North Korea, show them how great we all can be, and then hey, maybe, just maybe, tensions will go down and they won't try to just blow us up or start World War III. But as this and many other incidents would show, being nice to North Korea didn't really gain anyone all that much. Thus, this event would be one of the many nails that would be put into the coffin of the end of the Sunshine Policy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please let me know down in the comment section below what it is that you'd like to see me do next. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, do anything you can to help support this video in the algorithm. Also, if you haven't checked out in my description, please join Discord, please go and buy my coffee, do anything you can to really help support me because, well, anything is much appreciated at this point. Thank you everyone, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye guys.